homies. Welcome back to another episode of Easily Entertained, the pop culture podcast where the headlines are hot. The takes are, well, lukewarm to hot, depending on the day. And the vibe is one existential spiral away from enlightenment, okay? I'm your host and your pop culture Sherpa, Maddy McLean. And today's episode, it might as well be brought to you by monkeys, and not metaphorically, like literal monkeys, jungle monkeys, curious Georges, if you will. I've been quietly losing my shit over some monkey-adjacent news stories lately. And naturally, of course, that spiraled into a full-on themed episode, essentially. Well, we'll rock with it as far as we can take it. You know what I mean? Because we have lots to cover today. We're talking stoned apes, YouTubers with no survival instincts, the downfall of Coachella, space tourism for the rich, and because, well, none of my episodes are complete without it, some celebrity, courtroom, and legal drama. I just want to say that I hope that this podcast can serve as a place for you to drop your stresses at the door and just hang out with me for a little bit and giggle if you feel so inclined. This is a de-stressing zone. Although, that being said, we will talk about some triggering topics about the world and what's going on. But let me just remind you that the point is not to get bogged down in the very real realities of the stressful world we live in, because let me just validate that for you. It is a madhouse in here. We're not okay. We are not okay. But I challenge you to find the humor, the tiny little, it can be the smallest piece. It can be like the sleep you get out of your eyes when you wake up in the morning. That small amount of humor in a situation. And I promise you, it can turn shit around. And this is coming from a girly who I mean, constantly thinking, dare we say overthinking for sure. If you allow yourself to sit there for too long, it's really hard to get out of. Anyways, we are going to get into this monkey-themed episode. Let's get into it. So the other day, I found myself falling quickly down an internet rabbit hole that ended with me reading about what is called or referred to the Stoned Ape Theory. If you've never heard of it, congrats on being normal, I guess, but also let me ruin that for you now. This theory, it was made popular by the late psychedelic advocate and ethnobotanist, whatever that is, Terence McKenna, suggests that human consciousness was jump-started because some of our primate ancestors ate psychedelic mushrooms. That's literally the theory. I mean, I'll expand on it, but so mushrooms, like the trippy ones, magic mushrooms, and not just like one or two curious little chimps, little bad boys. Entire generations of early hominins allegedly microdosing in the jungle and suddenly inventing, I mean, I'm sure it's not suddenly, there's got to be some time frame there, but they're saying that's a jump off point. And there came language, self-awareness, spiritual awakenings, and I guess eventually like LinkedIn, you know? McKenna's whole thing is that these psilocybin mushrooms helped early humans develop a sharper vision, you know, to avoid predators, increased libido, nature's favorite motivator, and expanded creativity, leading to rituals, culture, spirituality, faith, the kind of first stirrings of what now we call consciousness, or humans eventually. And listen, I'm not a scientist, but I think I simply like this theory because I'd like to believe that. It's just fun. This was brought back into the, quote, mainstream consciousness because there has been study after study recently, and this began a few years back, but looking into the effects of psychedelic substances and mental health and kind of microdosing, mind you, let me make that clear, microdosing. But of course, the studies are a little difficult to do given, you know, those drugs tend to be illegal in most places. So this is mostly done in a clinical setting, and it started to, though, leave the clinic into the mainstream. One of those studies is 2024 Nature meta-analysis found that hallucinogenic agents boost communication between brain networks that don't usually interact, leading to novel connections and creative insights. They also weaken tight connections within individual networks, disrupting conventional thought patterns and triggering expanded states of awareness. Similarly, a Psychology Today article highlighted studies showing psychedelic compounds can supercharge mental performance and encourage brain rewiring. Yet, despite this growing interest in consciousness, the million-dollar question remains, does the Stoned Ape Theory have any scientific legs? And because we are balanced around here, unlike a mushroom trip, I should also mention that this theory is controversial, to say the least. And this scientific legs, it sounds like there's not much to stand on here. Most scientists are like a cute story, but please show your work. And there's no real empirical evidence for this, just a lot of poetic theorizing and, well, psychedelic enthusiasm, we might call it. Psychologist Greg Henriquez calls it not particularly plausible, noting that the actual evolution of consciousness likely had way more to do with social structures, language development, and tool use than mind-altering fungi. Also, the research McKenna cited, like studies from psychopharmacologists, so many huge words in science. Anyways, that psychopharmacologist Roland Fisher did show that psilocybin affects visual perception, but that's a pretty big leap from trippy visuals to birth of civilization. And I would have to agree, it's a fun theory and one that definitely feeds into the growing interest in psychedelics today. But most biologists are giving it a polite pass. But still, I do love the image of a bunch of ancient monkeys just absolutely vibing into sentience. Still, the research into microdosing and psychedelics within the mental health and psychology community, that does have more legs than that, though. And I am very interested in learning about these studies. So I can take a look into that and we can talk more about it if you are interested in that kind of theory or chatter. That being said, folks, don't do drugs. I am not advocating for that. Okay, this next story is peak. We are just monkeys with Wi-Fi and somewhat of an altered consciousness given the last story. So recently, an American YouTuber, because duh, we love stories that start that way, decided to test the limits of human intelligence by trying to make contact with the Sentinelese tribe. So for context, the Sentinelese live on North Sentinel Island in the Indian Ocean, and they're considered the most isolated tribe on Earth. And I'm not talking just like off the grid for a while, ditching our phones on a White Lotus retreat. We're talking we will literally spear you if you show up isolated. The Sentinelese people, or the North Sentinelese tribe, is actually one of the last few indigenous uncontacted tribes who prefer it that way and are protected legally by the government. There's apparently more than 100 uncontacted tribes in the globe. However, those are mostly in the Amazon rainforest. But the Sentinelese are, quote, the most isolated indigenous people in the world, according to Survival International. And from what they've been able to see, they hunt in the rainforest and they fish and are often weaving baskets and using spears, bows, and arrows, and are thought to live in kind of one large group, but there's a few others, and they live in large communal huts and don't wear much either. It is to be noted that their isolation is voluntary and they choose to remain separate from the outside world, completely detached from everything else going on, which sounds really nice right about now. They're also known to be hostile towards outsiders. Also, the Indian government has declared North Sentinel Island an exclusion zone, which means travel is strictly prohibited and they have to maintain a certain distance from the Sentinelese people. So there's no interference and they can live life as they are living. Now, back to current day, we have American YouTuber who's on a trip and decides to make a stop at the North Sentinel Island. This man, whose full name I'm not going to attempt to pronounce, approached the island by boat with none other than a can of Coca-Cola, just waving it around like it's a peace offering, or like he's Kendall Jenner with a Pepsi, ending racial injustice. But he also brought, this is confusing and strange, scissors and a football. And he did successfully reach the island, although CNN is saying that he did not appear to have made one-on-one or official contact with the tribe. He was actually spotted by a fisherman who was not a North Sentinelese person, but he was in the area coming back from some sort of fishing trip and alerted the police, in which the police quickly arrived and seized both the YouTuber and his none other, inflatable boat and motor. And he's not yet been charged, but we'll see. He is a U.S. citizen, and there has been a few times where this has happened before. John Allen Chow, you might remember his name from the headlines way back in 2018. He was a 26-year-old evangelist missionary who also made repeated attempts to reach the Sentinelese, only in his case, it was not for content. It was to convert them to Christianity. It does not matter what your goal is here. They've made it quite clear. This is where it gets serious, though. He paid local fishermen to take him illegally to the island and attempted contact multiple times over the span of a few days. They saw the man and raised their spears and warned him, essentially, but he came back and was leaving gifts like a football. He was journaling, at least from what we could see then, about being scared, but still approaching the island, driven by faith. But sadly, he was tragically killed by the tribe. They shot arrows at him as soon as he approached on this third attempt, and his death sparked international debate. It was clear, if it's made clear to you you're not welcome somewhere, odds are you're not welcome there, and they have every right to their privacy. I mean, I don't think people need to be spearing people, but you get what I'm saying. Some viewed him as a martyr who was deeply committed to his beliefs, but others pointed out the danger in what he did, not just to himself, but to the Sentinelese. He could have exposed them to outside diseases, cultural disruption. I mean, we're doing the same colonial patterns we've been repeating for centuries over here in America. And honestly, though, that part does matter. That being said, there are real risks as they're not exposed to all of the kinds of things people around the globe are existing in, in a larger urban environment and in kind of society today. Back to the American YouTuber, he had allegedly planned his trip well in advance, and he had visited the Andaman Islands twice before traveling to North Sentinel on his third visit, setting off from a beach about 25 miles away. As per what has been revealed in the investigation, he allegedly left a few of those soft drink bottles and the scissors and the football, but the police were unable to recover any of those items, so I suppose they could be in the hands of the tribe, which could pose serious risk for them, again, as they do not have the immunity for that. The Sentinelese have made it quite crystal clear, spear through the air clear, that they want to be left alone and not studied or saved or handed a branded beverage, but I think we just honor that. And speaking of influencers, Coachella weekend one was this last weekend. If you happen to have missed that somewhere on the interwebs, I don't know how you did, but congratulations, honestly. That's kind of like a work of art. But anyways, weekend two is this coming weekend, April 19th, Easter weekend. And hopefully it's better than the first weekend went down. And I'm not talking really, I'm sure the music was amazing, and I'm not going to be a total hater because I wish I was there. Let's be real. The lineup was pretty spectacular. Headliners like Lady Gaga, Green Day, Post Malone, Meg Thee Stallion, T-Pain, but the crowd was not hype enough at all, at least the videos I watched for T-Pain. I mean, he was playing his classics. Millennials know what I'm talking about here. It all started out pretty shitty though, and maybe I was looking out for Coachella videos on my TikTok FYP, but this sounds absolutely horrible, and what I'll refer to as the Great Desert Traffic Jam. So festival goers leaving as early as 3 a.m. the night before to immerse themselves in the Coachella experience ended up finding themselves immersed inside their vehicles for like 9 hours just to access the campgrounds and set up and enter the festival with temperatures upwards of 100 degrees, and there were no bathrooms around, no gas stations either. So people started running out of gas. Some people overheated. Oh, they also couldn't go to the bathroom. So then people were leaving their cars to relieve themselves publicly, like just wherever they could go. I mean, it is a desert, so can't imagine there being much coverage of, tree coverage there, maybe a good cacti or two. But then it started to slow the line down even more because cops started arresting the people that were peeing in public, public indecency. Situation started to remind us a little bit of, Fyre Fest, a little bit there. Eventually everybody was let in, but at that rate, I mean, I don't know. Do you give up? I don't know what I would do. That sounds absolutely horrendous. Now take that District 12, like every man for himself experience, somewhat dystopian, and smack that right next to the influencer glamping safari tent experience. And it's quite the contrast, y'all. Obviously, it's become even more so of really a content festival. Historically, celebrities, that's been more of something people are excited about because they kind of go low-key-ish and are a part of the crowd as much as one can be as a celebrity. And now it's turned into something a little bit different. There are all these brand parties. So you've got, Kendall Jenner's 818 Tequila or Heineken or Sony or what have you, throwing these parties that are outside of Coachella. Coachella's in Indio. They're out in Palm Springs or basically on the way to Coachella. And some people, a lot of influencers won't even step foot on the actual festival grounds. There was one video in particular that made the rounds that was absolutely demolished by everybody. Plenty of parodies made, but it is real. One influencer wanted to create a, quote, classic vintage campsite vibe. So what did he bring? A full Persian rug, inflatable bed, decorative lighting, as well as a potted cactus right next to the blow-up inflatable bed too. Displayed some cards splayed out on a table and said that his vintage cooler, unfortunately, wouldn't get in on time, so he couldn't bring that. So he just brought a regular Yeti. There are some elaborate setups, man. And they're definitely getting hated on. I see that. I mean, I don't think that the classic vintage campsite would have any of those items. It'd probably just be like a sleeping bag and a tent, no? I don't know. I don't make the rules, though, do I? Lots of festival goers have said that Coachella has completely changed and is no longer the same and hasn't been for the last 10 years. I don't know. But I can't truthfully be the judge on that as I have yet to attend Coachella. I would still go. I think that it's silly to judge people for having fun and spending money on what they want to spend it on. Although, let me tell you, I do have an exception. And that's what leads us to our next topic. Blue Origin's girl bossing so close to the sun we're in outer space moment. And I say that tongue in cheek. The girlies were busy blasting off into space. Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos's, in my opinion, cosplaying as NASA company, just sent an all-female crew on a suborbital space flight. meaning Blue Origin's New Shepard NS-31 mission, as they are calling it, that took off this past Monday, April 14th, took the 6-member crew, including Katy Perry, journalist Gayle King, civil rights activist and astrophysicist Amanda Wynn, filmmaker Carrie Ann Flynn, former NASA engineer Aisha Bao, and Blue Origin executive. Okay, that's very generous. Jeff Bezos' girlfriend, Lauren Sanchez, who I guess organized the mission, quote unquote mission. So the suborbital flight lasted approximately 11 minutes. That's it, y'all. Reaching an altitude of about 65 miles above Earth, which is still freaking sick, of course. However, the whole idea and demonstration and show and horse and pony show that this was completely, in my opinion, distasteful, out of context. Nobody's reading the room. Okay. Everybody has their heads up their own booties for this one. And it turns out a lot of people share that opinion. So this was all branded to us as this huge, momentous occasion for female rights and equality and feminism. We're sending these girly pops up into space. This is a huge deal. Young girls will see this and be inspired and, be ready to take on the world. Except it was not at all that. The flight was really an expensive rich person's carnival experience, should I say. And it was really reminding me of good old Ocean Gate, the Titanic submarine or the Titanic tourism submarine. Yeah, that's really what it's reminding me. I was kind of scared for them all, but this was very much televised, made a huge deal out of in the news. There was a live stream of this happening before they entered the spaceship and afterwards. I don't know, spaceship sounds crazy. The craft, the space crew, I don't know. I'm not an astronaut. But these women were acting and referring to themselves as astronauts, okay? And I also had to really research and look in to get the names of the other women who are scientists, Amanda Wynn and Aisha Bao, because that was not at all what the focus was. And so for them to say that this is all about championing women in STEM or in astrophysics or whatever is totally a stretch. This was not about female empowerment or representation or science or inspiring the next generation. No. This was putting on a show. At this point in time when everyone is living really on edge and unsure about the future, given the tariffs and the economic situation, and we're approaching a recession, hopping on a $28 million per seat ride, 11-minute ride, which was pretty much shorter than the All Too Well Taylor Swift long version music video. Yes, the song is 10 minutes, so technically it's I'm just trying to tell you how quick this bad boy was, but they milked it. There was cameras and interviews before they entered and afterwards about their experience. And let me tell you, during the live stream for these 11 minutes, I think Katy Perry stared into the cameras with a flower at one point, and then she held up this butterfly, and allegedly she also sang What a Wonderful World. I'm sorry, but this was totally the chance to sing E.T. If you're gonna be that bitch and sing in the spaceship, sing E.T. I'm so what? The opportunity lost. Although I will say she did not completely let it slide. Well, given she was staring into the screen the whole time. And also, I guess she revealed her tour set list while on this spaceship. I'm just going to keep saying spaceship because this just makes it all the more dystopian, crazy. What is this year? Really leans into that. But this whole thing, I was laughing. It was just so funny. After this 11-minute trip, they land safely back down, I guess in the Chihuahuan desert, and Jeff Bezos arrives to let the ladies out. only as some conspiracy theorists are pointing out that the door opened inwards, which is not usual for any sort of space journeying contraption, let's call it. But, neither here nor there. That was me just reading way too far into Reddit. Anyways, after these women get back from their 11-minute journey into space, Katy Perry and Gayle King step out of the ship and get down on their hands and knees and kiss the ground that they walked on. And were smiling. I think they did ayahuasca. I don't know. They did something. Maybe they're just high on life. Like, I think I would be high on life if I saw space, for sure. And if I ever got the chance to go to space, would I take it? Yes. So keep that in mind. I'm not a total, crazy person, but also, $28 million to do so. I don't know. I'd love it if it were, just picture this. That's going to be Tarte. This is going to be Tarte's brand trip in 2040 or Blue Origin space mission. Oh no. On top of the obviously pricey tickets to get on this mission, the spacesuits were designed by a very popular, well-known brand, Monse, who also shares a creative director with Oscar de la Renta. And Lauren Sanchez reached out to them to help design these suits in a collaboration to really emphasize the females belong in space. And so what does that mean? Of course, it means a bodycon suit with some flared ends and a really cute ruching at the top with a redesigned, essentially, Blue Origin NASA mix label. Allegedly. So they do look amazing. I too would want to look good in space, but I don't think it's giving the message they want it to give. They are very cool. I think it would be way cooler if they then donated a bunch of these suits to the actual NASA women astronauts, but these suits didn't have to come with the regular, life support system of the classic astronaut suit. So they still had to work within some technical specifications, but they had more. That's why they're able to make it bodycon, basically. And they weren't wearing helmets or anything like that because they weren't actually as far out into space or into the galaxies as, real astronauts are. And just to add to the energy they're giving off, this was in a New York Times article before the day of the mission. Miss Sanchez, Lauren Sanchez, brings it up and says they almost put a corset in the suit, but they did not do that. So that's probably, we still know about it. So I guess they might as well have done it because they went that far, More real life quotes include, "We're making space hot." And from the one and only Katy Perry, "We're putting the ass in astronaut." Yeah. So go feminism. Nothing screams feminism than turning something in STEM, just more makeup, more extensions, and a designer bodycon suit. Look, I love that shit more than the next woman, probably. I love being a woman. I love those traditionally stereotypical women things. But not all women do. And also, obviously, that is a trope that has taken us where we are. Sorry, Joe Rogan fans. I don't think I'm the podcast for you. Even celebrities got in on the discourse, including Emily Ratajkowski and Olivia Munn, surprisingly. I don't know why surprisingly. I just kind of love that. Called it out as peak billionaire out of touchness, and I 100% agree with them. Hey girlies, love that you're breaking the stratosphere ceiling, but maybe fix Earth first. If it took an 11-minute spaceship journey to then come down and be Katy Perry or Gayle King, who really should have stopped talking long time ago, say in interviews, it just really, I feel connected to love. Lauren Sanchez, the girlfriend of Jeff Bezos, said, "We're all in this together." Oh. And they genuinely are confused by the backlash. They're saying that we're missing the point and this is all about women and not to listen to the haters. And Gayle King said in an interview after the mission, said that it had deeper environmental goals. Apparently there's talk of researching space-based waste management. Okay, well, that was never talked about. And that allegedly the whole point was to get more women involved in STEM and space exploration. She basically said, we did it for the girls, not for the gram. And of course, there has been the conspiracy theorists abound. And so obviously, let's entertain ourselves and talk about that. The internet could not let billionaires float weightlessly in space. TikTok, Reddit, and certain corners of X, which, I rarely traverse to, that's basically my Blue Origin space mission, have declared this mission fake. People are calling it a green screen moment and that they allegedly filmed the whole thing on a sound stage where some people, those moon landing denier peoples, believe that that was faked. To be fair, if you're launching celebrities into space while the rest of us are, trying to figure out if we can buy a home or a car, or if, even more so, buy dinner for a family, it's quite distasteful, okay? And you're bound to get some critiques here. What do you think? Do you think it was a moment of historic inspiration for women? A PR stunt? A soft launch of the Real Housewives of the Milky Way? The jury's still out, but one thing is for sure. I think, unfortunately, we are going to see far more of these space exploration branded as, advancements in STEM. Which brings me to what the rest of us are dealing with. Let's talk about recession pop. You may have seen the term thrown around, and no, it's not a musical genre, although it sounds like one. It's being referred to as a cultural phenomenon of sorts that resurfaces when the economy takes a hit. So think back to late 2000s, 2008, not too hard, okay? The housing market crashed, jobs were lost, and yet the airwaves were filled with upbeat anthems like Don't Stop the Music by Rihanna. We got I Got a Feeling by the Black Eyed Peas. And our girl aforementioned Katy Perry's Teenage Dream, back when she was a little bit less controversial and really like attention seeking. Do you guys remember when she went on a 24-hour live stream just because in like this weird room? Yeah, that was fucking weird. Now, these tracks weren't just catchy, but they were also looked at as sort of a collective coping mechanism, encouraging us to dance away our worries. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing the very same thing. Economic indicators. I am definitely no economist or finance girly by any means of the definition, but one thing I've started to educate myself on in particular is this said recession pop. People are mentioning it like it's something I should have known throughout the interwebs, if you will. But now it does make a lot of sense, and I find it a very interesting concept. So basically, recession pop is the idea of creating an escapism, overly popular, happy, high BPM driven pop music that essentially provides some sort of happy remembrance or nostalgic, remembering the good old days, basically. Getting on the dance floor, forgetting about everything. And that's why we had some of the best pop hits in the late 2000s. We all refer to it. We all miss it. We have that nostalgia, i.e. T-Pain, that kind of shit. It turns out that during economic downturns that there actually is a spike in nostalgic content. It's a way for people to think back on how things are better over there, offering some sort of comfort, essentially. People are bringing this up because, well, outside of the obvious economic downturn that we're experiencing, we have nostalgic throwback partnerships and collabs like Kesha and T-Pain's latest single, Yippee-Ki-Yay. Did I say that right? Or, got Lady Gaga returning to her OG form of pop with her new album Mayhem. People are saying the recession indicators, at least in terms of pop culture, go beyond even recession pop and pop music. There's a new Hunger Games book and fashion, allegedly, too, with peplum tops and skinny jeans. I think there's a lot of things we could just, any sort of 2000s trend, turn into a recession indicator, but I'm not going to destroy that because I think it's entertaining. Another funny thing, a funny petty thing going on, has anyone been on trade war TikTok? So basically now we're losing TikTok for sure, is after these trade wars have begun, I've seen lots of videos, and so have a lot of people, because there are hella likes on them, Chinese manufacturers and designers, people that work in the factories in which all of these huge brand name fashion designer brands are made, are basically pulling out the receipts and showing these Pradas for $5. Oh, you want a Tide Pod? You can get 10 for 5 cents, this kind of thing. And you even have a guy who's dressed up as Trump and he's saying these things. It's just pretty hilarious. So now people are trying to find ways to, buy whole place or buy direct from these manufacturers, which, if you didn't know that before, that everything is probably upcharged by upwards of 200%. Wow. Now you do. Now we all do. We'll see what happens there. But you know what can be a recession indicator? This podcast. As long as you also count it as an economic boom podcast as well. So I can have my cake and eat it too. But really, it's so you can have your cake and eat it too. We'll end up with a quick fire round of news that you should know, but maybe don't want to. I don't know. Diddy is in jail, and according to New York Times, he's not thriving. Reports say he's not adjusting well, which no shit. Jail is not the Soho House. And he kind of expects to have the public love him, like, oddly enough, Luigi Mangione. Whatever your opinions are on that, he genuinely is feeling like he's not the coolest cat in jail. And that's probably the biggest thing that's frustrating him. So that says a lot. Combs, who is jailed in the New York City Metropolitan Detention Center for the last almost 7 months, is inmate 37452-054. I don't know why I said it like that, but it felt like how maybe somebody in jail would say it. I don't know. He has remained there despite his lawyer's arguments that he should be free until the trial begins. But even from within the jail space, there's been rumors that he is sending people to basically go out and attack any sort of content creators covering this story. So in order for me to cover my own booty, I'm going to go ahead and say this is all alleged and entertainment purposes only, discussing what's going on and what I'm reading and is publicly available. Thank you. Combs is living in a 20-person dormitory in one of the probably more well-known for housing infamous inmates, including cryptocurrency entrepreneur Sam Bankman-Fried, who was recently jailed for his fraud conviction, and Luigi Mangione, who also happens to share a lawyer with Diddy. The conditions in Foreign North is that they're generally free to move about. They've got TVs, a microwave, and a room where they can basically work out. They don't have access to the internet, but they can watch movies and listen to music on tablets that they can purchase in commissary. Whoa. Truthfully, I never realized you could buy a whole ass iPad in a jail commissary. Is that normal? I don't know. Anyways, so he gets a laptop without Wi-Fi to work through trial documents, which he can use between 8 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. in the visiting room or in the room where inmates will use to take video calls and FaceTimes and such. Telephone calls are limited to 15 minutes, but prosecutors are saying that Combs has bought other inmates' phone privileges and such. So, I mean, old habits die hard and all of that. So the latest in terms of the trial is that Cassie has officially confirmed that she will be testifying at the trial under her legal name, her real name, and as herself. She was still up into relatively recently referred to as a Jane Doe 1, as she brought forth the lawsuit that really opened the floodgates for everything else and for everything else to be exposed. So if it wasn't for her bravery, all of this wouldn't be going down. And man, applaud her for that. I can't even imagine. I'm just saying, I think that it's not a coincidence that we're seeing Justin Bieber kind of go through a public deterioration, like the bald, like shaved head Britney style. And I genuinely say this sadly. Like, I really do. I hope it is all speculation and that he's totally fine and is getting the help that he needs. But I am low-key worried about Justin Bieber. If I had a crystal ball, I would probably say that Diddy's done for. So, and Diddy did it. Diddy did it. Yeah. Next in disgraced famous people, I suppose we'll call this. Russell Brand was officially charged in the UK with multiple counts of grape and SA, and charges are catching up to the chaos he's created. His spiritual rebrand be damned. Of course, innocent till proven guilty. I will say where there's smoke, there's usually fire, and this is not the first allegation. So, that being said, he's been very open about having been a sexually deviant, as he said, person, and really did jump right into the Hollywood lifestyle and started sleeping with a bunch of people. And he recognizes that, but that he maintains his innocence and that all of it was consensual. So, and in the UK, they are far more protective when it comes to basically a gag order, if you will, that it's very much hush-hush. So really, there's not a ton of info on this specific charge yet, but more will be revealed in the future, and I can keep you updated on that. Woof, what a day. So can you see now why this was themed monkeys with Wi-Fi? So that is the episode, and we may have learned that monkeys probably started civilization. Influencers have no boundaries, and we really haven't evolved that much. Let's just remember we're all monkeys with microphones, and let's really make it count in this one monkey life we have. I don't know. I was really trying to work that in throughout. If you laughed, lived, loved, learned, or screamed into the void with me today, if you can, share the show with a friend, post on your story. That helps me so much, and I really appreciate it. You can find us on our website and follow all of these socials, www.easilyentertainedpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. As always, keep it safe, keep it cool, keep it classy, homies. I said as always, but I've never really said all of that together before. So I'll see you next week. Bye, homies.